Robert Kisala SVD, the Vice General of Society of Divine Word, shares his life experience as an SVD missionary in Japan. He confessed how culture and local people played a vital role for his personal transformation.
When I was in the minor seminary, as well as in college in the United States, my dream was to work in Mexico as a missionary. Two of my classmates in the minor seminary were Mexican Americans, so that was part of the reason. But also, when I was in college especially, I was very interested in liberation theology. So my dream was to work in Mexico or Latin America. By chance, by coincidence, after I finished college, I had the opportunity to go to Japan for 2 years to teach in one of our high schools there. And it was because of this that I ended up spending almost half my life in Japan afterwards. It was after I started working on the General Council in 2007 when I had the first chance to actually go to Mexico. I was there for 3 months to study Spanish. And while I was there, occasionally, I would think how much different I might have been if I had gone to Mexico in the beginning rather than to Japan. And it was because of this experience, perhaps, that I began to reflect a little bit on how perhaps Japan had changed me, on what gifts I had received by being in Japan for 20 years. And I was thinking perhaps one of those gifts would be a sense of thanksgiving. In some ways, thanksgiving is one of the most important virtues in Japanese religion. I had the opportunity to do research on Japanese religions while I was studying in Tokyo, to do some field work, to attend the services of some of the different new religious movements in Japan. And one of the recurring themes was the need to give thanks for everything, that everything is a gift from God. And often they would use one of the many stories of the Buddha, how the Buddha, even when he was being persecuted by his enemies, would give thanks for his enemies because they helped him to reach nirvana. They helped him to reach enlightenment. So even the worst circumstances, even the most trying circumstances, should be a cause for thanksgiving. It was one of the things, perhaps, that I learned from Japan. I'm still not very good at it, but at least the awareness, perhaps, is one gift from Japan. I was thinking perhaps another gift might be a sense of responsibility, of being willing to take responsibility. We all know one of the caricatures of Japan is the samurai who falls on his sword in taking responsibility for his failures. And even today in Japan, oftentimes the president of a corporation, of a company, who has run into some scandal will appear before the press and apologize profusely and then resign from his position to take responsibility. Perhaps those are all the extreme, the caricature. But the idea of responsibility in Japan, in Japanese, we can change the way that we are interacting with others. And perhaps in some way that will then change the other people around us that will then change the world around us. I went from the idea of changing structures in liberation theology to the idea of changing my own heart in order to change the world. Perhaps those are some of the things, some of the gifts that I feel that I have received by working in Japan. The gospel message today is the story of the multiplication of the loaves. That Jesus took the gift of the 5 loaves and fishes from one of the young men who was there among the crowd, multiplied it, prayed over it, blessed it, and multiplied it so that there was enough for everyone to eat. And in this way, we believe that Jesus also is able to take the gifts of various cultures, to bless them and multiply them, and to give them as gifts to many of us, to many of the people that we work with throughout the world. There was a famous author, I think he was Greek, but I cannot remember the name right now, who had a different interpretation of this story of the multiplication of the loaves. He'd say that his interpretation is like the miracle of the sharing of the loaves. In his interpretation, many of the people who were gathered there to hear Jesus had brought some small food with them, but they were afraid that there would not be enough for both themselves and for others if they were to take it out and share it. And so the small food was hidden in the folds of their cloaks. And when Jesus took the 5 loaves and fishes from the little boy and blessed it and started distributing it, they were also moved to take the small food that they had carried with them from the folds of their cloaks and to begin to share it among those who were around them. And in the end, by sharing the little bit that all of them had put together, there was enough to feed everybody there and still have 5 basketfuls of scraps left over. In the same way, we can see the sharing of gifts of different cultures. We might not think that we have much to give, but by being moved by this miracle of sharing, we've suddenly realized the tremendous gifts that all of us have and how much it can contribute to each other and to our world. So we pray again today in thanksgiving to God for having created us in our world in tremendous diversity, with a tremendous array of different gifts that we have to share with one another. And we ask as we continue in our seminar today and tomorrow that we might be moved even more by the Spirit to open our hearts to others, to receive and to give the gifts that we have, to share these gifts among ourselves and among the people with whom we work throughout the world.